Let us begin. Not with comfort, not with ease, but with truth. This isn't the kind of video that soothes your wounds with warm words. It's the kind that pours salt on them, because only then will you finally feel what you've numbed for so long. This isn't cruelty, it's clarity. And clarity, though sharp, is the beginning of all freedom. Since childhood, you've been taught to search for answers outside yourself, to point fingers, assign blame, write stories where others are the villains and you, the passive observer. And more often than not, the first character cast in shadow is your mother. But here is where we begin to unravel the illusion. It's not your mother who has the final grip on your life. It's the internal version of her that lives, unexamined, in the background of your every decision. A memory that became architecture, a voice that became your own. This isn't about blaming her. This isn't about protecting her either. It's about recognizing that part of what holds you back isn't her. It's what you've internalized about her. What your psyche, fragile and impressionable, made of her gaze, her absence, her praise, her silence. The way she looked at you, or didn't. The way she comforted you, or couldn't. Philosopher Carl Jung called it the mother archetype. Not a woman, but a symbol. Not a fact, but a force. A primal blueprint of nurture, safety, and origin, but also of control, guilt, and dependency. When that archetype is wounded, it distorts everything it touches. And what it touches, most of all, is your idea of yourself. You've tried to grow. You've tried to love. You've read the books, said the affirmations, did the inner child meditations. But something in you clings to old patterns, old wounds, not because you enjoy suffering, but because it's familiar. And the mind loves what it knows, even if what it knows is pain. You might think you've moved on, but if your relationships are still shaped by fear of rejection, if your self-worth still hinges on external validation, if you still can't say no without guilt, then you haven't. Because the war is not outside you. It never was. The battlefield is internal, and the opponent is not your mother, but the idea of her. That idea is powerful. It judges you in your quiet moments. It whispers you're not enough. It sabotages your growth, not to punish you, but to keep you loyal. Because somewhere deep down, a part of you made an unconscious vow: I won't outgrow you. I won't become more free than you were. That loyalty is invisible, but it is binding. And worse, it looks like love. It disguises itself as duty, as compassion, as empathy. But it's really fear. Real love liberates. But internalized loyalty? That restricts. It repeats stories. It ensures cycles stay unbroken. The chains that keep you stuck often wear the disguise of care. So how do you begin to heal what you cannot see? You begin by confronting the myth of the perfect mother, the myth of the evil mother, the myth of the self-sacrificing, all-knowing, all-demanding maternal figure. You begin by confronting the pedestal and the pit, both of which distort reality. None of these are real. They're projections, constructions of the child mind. And while they were once useful for survival, now they're cages. Beautiful cages, sentimental cages, but cages all the same. Philosophy asks us to examine the assumptions we live by. This is your call to do that. Not with books, but with your own mind, with brutal honesty, with compassionate inquiry. Ask yourself, when I seek love, am I seeking love or repair? When I feel rejected, is it the person who hurt me or an echo of a much older pain? When I abandon myself to please others, who am I still hoping will finally stay? And here's a deeper layer. When I succeed and feel unworthy, who am I afraid I'm betraying? Go even deeper. When I hesitate to pursue joy, is it because I still believe joy is something that must be earned, not chosen? When I speak to myself in harsh tones, Whose voice am I really repeating? Start to take note of your automatic responses. Are they truly yours? Or are they inherited, learned from years of walking on eggshells, of being trained to keep the peace at the expense of your authenticity? Often, the root of our reactions lies buried in a desire to maintain emotional safety, not as we define it now, but as we learned to survive back then. Here's a truth worth sitting with. Much of our suffering doesn't come from current pain, but from ancient narratives we never dared to question. Stories we swallowed whole, often without realizing they were stories at all, and now they narrate our present in our own voice. You have inherited not only a history of actions, but a history of silences. What was never spoken, never validated, never held, these live inside you too. And they make decisions for you if you're not aware. They choose your partners. They influence your tone. They shape your ambition. And sometimes, they convince you that shrinking is safer than standing tall. But you are here to rewrite the rules. The stories you tell yourself are not final. They can evolve. You have the power to reauthor your inner narrative, to create a self-concept not born of reaction, but of reflection, of choice, of awakening. Healing begins with the courage to stop waiting for them to change, waiting for the past to apologize, waiting for a different childhood, waiting for closure from a door that was never opened. You won't get it. But you can give yourself something else, a new way of being, a new set of eyes, a new voice, no longer inherited, but authored by the adult you are becoming, not the child who was shaped by unmet needs. This means grieving, not just a person, but a possibility. The version of your mother who could have loved you better. The version of your childhood that could have made you feel safe. The version of yourself who never had to build walls. Grieving not as a weakness, but as a rite of passage. Grieve it. Cry for it, rage for it, and then let it go. Not because it didn't matter, but because it can no longer rule you. Because your allegiance is no longer to survival, it is to truth. This isn't a betrayal of her. This is an act of responsibility for yourself and for those who come after you. You are no longer 5. You are no longer waiting in a room for someone to come tell you it's okay. Now, you are the one who must walk in, kneel beside that inner child, and say it yourself. You're safe now. I'm here. I see you. You are both the injured and the healer, the abandoned and the redeemer, the child and the parent, the philosopher and the question. The philosophical life isn't just lived in abstraction. It's embodied. It's the daily practice of choosing self-awareness over autopilot, of choosing conscious action over inherited reaction, of meeting each moment as a chance to choose differently. And yes, it will hurt. There will be resistance. Because your nervous system, trained by years of repetition, will want to go back to what it knows. Safety often looks like suffering, if suffering is what raised you. But you're here to break patterns, to end emotional legacies, to set new trajectories for future generations, by choosing to love yourself without condition, by becoming the parent your parent couldn't be. How? By pausing before you react, by recognizing when the old voice is speaking, by replacing judgment with curiosity, by treating yourself not as a problem to be fixed, but as a story to be listened to, by practicing daily rituals of self-regard, by forgiving yourself, not once, but repeatedly, by building routines that reinforce your worth rather than your wounds, by allowing pleasure without permission, by speaking your needs without apology, by reminding yourself that self-trust is not arrogance, it's evidence of healing. Let this also be said. Evolution is not linear. It is not a ladder. It is a spiral. You will revisit the same feelings. You will face the same ghosts. But each time, you meet them with more strength, more clarity, more wisdom. That is growth. You will find that some days you slip into old roles. Some days you long for the familiar ache. That doesn't mean you've failed. That means you're human. Let go of perfection. Embrace progress. It is enough. You might even find moments of peace, unexpected and unfamiliar. And in those moments, you'll question whether you deserve them. You do. Because healing doesn't mean you never feel pain again. It means you finally know how to carry it. It means you stop letting it define your worth. And when guilt rises, because it will, ask yourself, whose guilt is this? When you shine and feel like you're doing something wrong, ask, whose voice is telling me that visibility is dangerous? When you rest and feel lazy, when you play and feel childish, when you express and feel too much, ask, whose standards am I still trying to meet? And most of all, when you start to feel like a traitor to your roots, remember this. Evolution is not betrayal. It is the deepest form of honoring. Your joy does not dishonor those who suffered. In fact, the greatest act of honor is to transcend, to turn their pain into your strength, their silence into your voice, their restraint into your liberation. That is how you break invisible chains, with presence, with responsibility, with love. You don't need to cut people off. You need to cut the strings that tie your worth to their approval. You need to snip the invisible contracts that say, I'll only be okay if you're okay with me. You don't need to erase the past. You need to stop living in its shadow. You need to light your own flame. You don't need to fix the mother. You need to mother yourself. And that, perhaps, is the deepest philosophical act of all. To become your own origin. To become the nurturing presence your inner world has been starving for. So ask yourself now, what parts of me are still living someone else's script? What unspoken vows am I ready to release? What new version of self do I choose to become? This journey isn't linear. It's cyclical, messy, sacred, and it never really ends. But with every conscious choice, every kind word to yourself, every moment of clarity, you reclaim a piece of your truth. And in doing so, you don't just free yourself. You honor the generations who came before, and the ones who are still to come. Live that truth, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because the most radical act of philosophy is to not only think differently, but to live differently. And that begins now. And here's something else worth remembering. The path of emotional maturity is rarely a straight road. It's more like a winding path through a dense forest, sometimes dark, sometimes beautiful, often confusing. But with each step, you clear the way for light to break through. Each courageous act of honesty becomes a torch you pass to your future self. You are not here just to survive. You are here to thrive with depth, to be a conscious architect of your inner world, to rewrite legacies, not by denying where you came from, but by choosing where you go next. So let this be your moment, not of resolution, but of reclamation. Let this be where you stop carrying pain as identity and start carrying wisdom as power. Let this be where you become the author of your own name, not a footnote in someone else's story. Because in the end, this isn't about your mother. It's about you, the one who dares to wake up, the one who dares to choose love over fear, the one who chooses to live, not by default, but by design. And that life you long for, it's already waiting, right on the other side of your courage. Now, go meet it.